This lovely manhwa is titled Survive as the Villain's Cousin. If you love stories like this, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Imagine being reincarnated into a story where you die at 10 years old. The story begins with a kindergarten teacher falling into the ocean, children crying out while she sinks deep into the water. The teacher was glad she was able to save all the children, but her life ended here, or so she thought. She was shocked when she saw a human figure in the water. Anyone who was dying would think it was the angel of death. She immediately shut her eyes when the figure used his staff to create a lightning circle below. "Wait, you?" she shouted as she opened her eyes. Lee Soo-yeon was a kindergarten teacher. After losing consciousness in a bus accident, she found herself in a romance fantasy novel she used to read, Cinderella Who Doesn't Wear Glass Shoe, a #1 romance fantasy bestseller. The main plot is about the protagonist, who can see spirits, marked by a pink hue, and her life in the magical academy. In addition, there's the crown prince, who ends up with the female protagonist, Ariel, the villain, Grendon, the commander of knights, and Sirius, the cursed second prince. As the crown prince and the female protagonist headed to their perfect happy ending, all the supporting characters met a tragic fate, which was an extreme plot twist. "Cernia!" they called out, and she opened her eyes. At first, she wondered if she was the main character of this novel, but then, being called Cernia, it was obvious she was a minor character. Cernia is the late Duke's daughter, who only appears briefly in the side story. Hearing her name called again, 7-year-old Cernia apologized, saying she was lost in her thoughts. Two kids with red hair were arguing in front of her. The girl asked her to read her a love story, while the boy asked her to read a hero story. Before she knew it, the two began fighting again, and she sat in the middle, watching. After the late Duke and his wife died in an accident, his younger brother, the current Duke, inherited the house and took Cernia in, since she had become an orphan. These two kids fighting in front of her were her cousins, Ariel, and they were 5 years old. "Cernia!" they both shouted, asking what she thought. Having stubborn kids around can be a handful, and these two happened to be twins. Extra workload. Cernia thought to herself that even though they looked angelic now, these two would definitely become the greatest villains in this story. The kids looked at her, waiting for a decision, and instead of taking sides, she told them softly and sweetly that she was happy to be with them. They hugged her tightly, asking if she really meant it. Cernia held them close, and I must say, this was really cute. What no one saw coming was that Cernia was the one who made these two kids villains in this story. In the original story, Cernia was jealous of the twins. She claimed she loved them, but killed nannies regularly and literally traumatized the kids. Cernia ended her own life and cursed the two. Remembering this, Cernia thought to herself that she would not let the original happen. "Ariel!" Cernia called out, showing her a romance fantasy book and asking her to read it for them. Let's see. "The Grown-Ups Affairs?" Cernia said, and told Ariel they'd read it when they were older. Ariel became sad but agreed, saying she would do just like Cernia said. Cernia was relieved and thanked her for obeying. Ariel smiled, asking her to give her a kiss on the cheek. Cernia was surprised when Ariel grabbed her softly with a sad face, saying he wanted a kiss too. Cernia thought to herself she shouldn't spoil them, but who could refuse these adorable kids? She told them it would be a secret. Ariel kissed her on the cheeks excitedly, saying they'd keep it a secret, of course. Cernia was happy seeing them happy. She thought to herself that children need to be loved. She promised to stop them from becoming villains, even with her own life. With her experience teaching kindergarten, I'm sure she would treat them the way they deserved. Immediately, the door opened and the kids were startled. It was Duke Nermis Argentine. "I can hear the noise all the way from outside the door," he said. The kids shrugged sadly, looking down. Nermis walked away, saying they must behave according to the family standards, and slammed the door. Did he just tell the kids not to laugh and have fun? Seriously? Cernia turned to Ariel, asking if she was okay, apologizing, saying they got scolded because of her. "Does father hate us?" she asked sadly. Cernia smiled, saying the Duke didn't hate them. Ariel added with a cold expression that their father didn't hate them, rather he just didn't care about them at all. The two kids looked so sad and bitter. Cernia called out to Ariel, but she turned away, wiping her tears, and said she was okay. Cernia held both their hands, telling her she would go talk with their father. The twins were surprised, asking why she wanted to do that. Cernia chuckled, thinking to herself that it was because she loved them. Walking through the hallway, she thought to herself that even though she loved the twins, they still needed the love of their parents. She promised to do whatever was necessary to stop the twins from becoming villains and to save herself too. Reaching the Duke's door, the butler stood there with a questioning expression. "Have you come to see the Duke, your ladyship?" he asked. Cernia stood there coldly, wondering what she should do now, suddenly feeling nervous. "Dane, can I see the Duke right now?" Cernia asked, saying she had something important to discuss with him. Dane nodded, saying he understood. This was actually the first time she would be meeting the Duke since entering the mansion. Watching the butler go to inform the Duke, she wondered what she would do if he refused her. "Young miss, I'll take you to the office," he said, allowing her in. As expected, the Duke was handling some documents when she entered. She thought to herself how the scratching sound of paper was so relaxing. The Duke had the Argentine's signature hair and eye color. In the original story, the twins' father was portrayed as cold as ice. The Duke is so cute! Now she knows where the kids got their looks from. The Duke continued writing and then spoke up, saying he heard she wanted to discuss something with him. Little Cernia stood right before his desk, hesitating, and said yes, nervously. She tried to tell herself to stay calm. After all, she was just 7 years old, and a little nonsense would be tolerated. Surely they wouldn't kick a child out. "Duke, Ariel and Ariel are only 5 years old. They're at an age when they really need their parents' love. I understand you're really busy, but it would be nice if you could be with the children sometimes," Cernia shouted confidently. The Duke was surprised that she was suggesting he spend time with the children. Cernia added that at least tea time would do. Then she went silent, maintaining her composure, thinking to herself that asking the Duke to show love right away wouldn't work. The Duke remained silent, glancing at her without a word. He even stopped writing, looking at her with his hands joined. Cernia was confused. She wondered why he was just staring at her. At that moment, she thought she was definitely getting kicked out. "Did the twins make you do this? Did they ask to be loved?" he suddenly asked. Cernia replied that it wasn't that. They were just her thoughts on what was right. The Duke sighed, looking down. "They're children who will take over the Argentine family in the future. I shouldn't pamper them." Cernia told him that he was right. The members of the Argentine family should be strong, but if you raise the heirs too strictly, focusing only on punishment, they wouldn't grow up properly. Hearing this, the Duke went silent again. Her lady thought piteously to herself that she just wanted the children to live happily, because if they grew up the way they did in the original story, they would end up twisted. Finally, the Duke spoke. "You're saying the same thing Rowan said." Her lady thought to herself, Rowan was the name of Cernia's deceased mother. If her mother had said the same thing, then she really needed to push harder. "It's not just sweet words. Once a month, during tea time, the Duke can check the children's progress, praising them or giving advice," she said, adding that it would give the twins a chance to grow properly. The Duke asked little Cernia what her benefit would be if he followed her advice. Cernia was surprised. "Bro, she'll get to live and not die." She told him that the children would get to grow properly. The Duke asked again if she would be okay with that. At this point, he was confusing her, but instead of pushing further, he said he understood and would let Dane know. Cernia's face instantly lit up with a smile. She turned away immediately, saying she would take her leave. The Duke sat still, thinking to himself that her response clearly showed her benefit was that the twins would grow up properly. He smiled, saying she sounded just like her mother, Rowan. Cernia opened the door excitedly, calling out to the kids, only to be shocked by what she saw. The two were at each other's throats again, each blaming the other. "Why are you fighting again?" she yelled. They turned to her, holding each other's cheeks tightly. They quickly let go, both teary and sad. Immediately, they rushed over and hugged Cernia, admitting they were all wrong. They hugged her so tightly that she lost her balance, and all three fell to the ground. Cernia let out a tiny smile, asking what they were talking about. Ariel started crying. even if we're not loved by Father, being loved by you is enough for me." Her lady told them sadly that she wasn't going anywhere and would always be by their side. "Were you afraid I'd get kicked out by the Duke?" she asked. The twins went silent, looking pitiful. Her lady reassured them that it was fine because the Duke wasn't as heartless as they thought. The twins looked at her in shock. She was saying their father wasn't cold-hearted? Cernia chuckled. "He's a tiny bit cold-hearted, but not as much as you think." "But from now on, you'll get to spend time with him once a month," Cernia informed them, leaving them surprised. "We get to spend time with Father once a month?" They turned to each other in shock. Seeing this, her lady couldn't help but laugh out loud at how surprised the twins were. "What should we play today?" she asked, trying to shift their thoughts away from everything else. Cernia got dressed and went out with the kids, proudly thinking to herself that she was one step away from dying like in the original story. The figure with the black robe and staff had been the last person she met before reincarnating here. Back then, she thought it was a dream. When she tried to speak, because she had so many things to say, she couldn't. She held her throat tightly, wondering why she couldn't speak. Before she could ask who the figure was, it struck its staff and lightning appeared. She immediately shut her eyes. That was how she ended up here. That day, Cernia woke up, stepped down from her bed wearing her shoes, and walked straight to the mirror. She thought to herself that in the original story, Cernia died at the age of 10, telling the twins that there was no one in the world who could actually love them. But now she was older than 10, and the good thing is, she was still alive. Cernia looked more beautiful after turning 16. She looked like a teenager and was more mature. During this time, the relationship between the Duke and the twins had improved, and the atmosphere in the Duke Ardentine household had changed for the better. In her room, going through the drawer, she thought to herself, there's no time to waste. In a year, the Crown Prince's birthday banquet would take place, and a few years later, the original story would begin in full swing. Cernia took out a notebook and wrote down the events of the original story. As soon as she came here, the first thing she did was summarize it. She went through it carefully to see important details she might missed. Cinderella Doesn't Wear Glass Heels, as we said, is a twisted romance story involving 2 protagonists, 1 villainess, and 3 secondary male leads. At the Crown Prince's 15th birthday, Ariel falls in love with the Crown Prince at first sight, but the Crown Prince falls in love with the heroine, Daisy, instead. Consumed by jealousy, Ariel curses Daisy at the cost of her own life. However, thwarting Ariel's plan, Daisy breaks the curse and survives because Sirius, one of the secondary male leads, sacrifices his life to lift Daisy's curse. Even after 2 people in the novel died, the tragedy didn't end. Ariel started putting even more effort into making Daisy's life miserable. At the climax of the novel, Ariel leads a rebellion to take Daisy away. The 3rd male lead, Glendwyn, dies while protecting Daisy in the burning palace. The rebellion ends in failure and the Crown Prince kills Ariel. Thus, Helios and Daisy achieved their happy ending. A happy ending where no one but the main character survived. That's literally not a happy ending, dude. It's a tragedy. Cernia sighed, thinking that the Duke's relationship with the twins had improved, so avoiding the villainous route was possible. She was glad she had survived, but it was becoming hard to predict how the story would progress. Her face suddenly turned sad as she wondered if this would even be enough. She felt a bit uneasy. Then she concluded it must be because the original story was approaching. It was the one day in the month that the Duke spent time with the twins during tea, the same event she had proposed 9 years ago, which had continued without fail until now. The twins were 14 years old and she was 16. They all sat quietly and suddenly the Duke spoke up. "Ariel, I heard that you already finished Chartier," he said. She smiled. "That's right. It's the language of the kingdom right next to the magic tower. I'd also like to learn the language of Rayan, if possible." Rayan was Cernia's mother's homeland. The Duke called on Ariel next. He answered anxiously. "They said you broke a porcelain vase while running in the hallway." He asked him to be mindful of his behavior. Ariel shrugged sadly. Cernia chuckled quietly along with Ariel. The Duke praised him for reaching the rank of sword expert and added that he must reach the pinnacle of the sword just before sword master, befitting the Ardentine name. Meanwhile, in Cernia's room, a maid walked in to tidy up before her lady came to bed. She was immediately shocked at the sight of blood on the floor and screamed. The Duke and the kids, having tea, heard the scream and looked up surprised, wondering what had happened. What could have happened? Immediately, one of the maids rushed into the tea room. The Duke asked what the commotion was about. The maid apologized for interrupting, telling the Duke fearfully that there was a matter requiring his immediate attention. The twins were confused. The maid whispered to the Duke, and he immediately said he would go himself. He glanced at Cernia. She asked if it concerned her, and if it did, she would come along. The Duke headed out with the maid, telling her to follow her own judgment. The three of them went down the hallway. Cernia noticed that the commotion was in the direction of her room. Maids had gathered at her door. When they entered, her eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The floor was covered in blood, and lying on it was a doll. A cursed doll? She thought to herself. She stood frozen, realizing this was definitely an event from one of the side stories. It was the only episode in the story where Cernia appeared. When the twins were 10 years old, Cernia had found a cursed doll in Nanny Burns' room and immediately accused the nanny of cursing the twins. The nanny had been executed on the spot. Despite the culprit being revealed, the Duke had continued investigating the mastermind. While examining the nanny's room, strands of Cernia's hair and her favorite pearl earrings were found. On top of that, a diary revealing her jealousy toward the twins was discovered. That was when they realized the true mastermind behind the cursed doll incident wasn't the nanny, but Cernia. The Duke accused her as the real perpetrator. Cernia tried to deny it, calling out to the twins for help, but they all stood still and watched her without doing anything. She yelled at them to say something, but they laughed instead, leaving her in pain and crying. However, the cursed doll incident had happened when the twins were 10. Cernia wondered why it was suddenly happening now. The Duke went forward while her lady stood behind him. He approached the bed and asked what had happened. The maid began crying, explaining that she had walked in to tidy the young lady's room. Another maid interrupted, saying she had reported the issue immediately, which is why she had rushed to the Duke. The Duke picked up the doll and examined it closely. He immediately infused his magic into it. Cernia was confused, wondering what exactly he was doing. After infusing magic into the doll, it burst and turned to ashes. Dane called out immediately from behind, asking what he was doing. "I tried infusing magic onto it. It's not a curse," His Grace said, and everyone was surprised. Cernia was shocked. "It's not a curse?" she thought. A curse is a type of magic created through a contract. When it is exposed to other magic, it reacts negatively to protect the contract. She was even more surprised when the Duke discovered her strand of hair and her earring. He immediately asked if they were hers. Her lady confirmed they were, adding that she had lost the earring before. The crazy part of this matter was that the cursed doll wasn't found in the nanny's room, but this time it was in her room, yet the contents remained the same, her hair strand and lost pearl earring. If that was the case, then the original target of the curse wasn't the twins anymore, it was Cernia. She realized instantly that the nanny had intended to curse her, not the twins, and while Cernia had been jealous of the twins, she wasn't the one behind the curse. Cernia thought to herself, this is seriously a narrative trick. Two critical pieces of information had been deliberately hidden. The novel had provided intentionally biased information. The author wanted to deceive the readers. What kind of romance fantasy novel uses a narrative trick? The Duke turned to her while she was lost in her thoughts and asked if she had any guesses about who could have done this. Cernia really wanted to say the culprit was the nanny, but she had no evidence. "I don't know," she sighed. The Duke walked away, saying that if she didn't know, then that was fine. She should just stay with the twins, and he would definitely catch the culprit. "Dane, gather everyone in the household, from the coachman to the knights," the Duke commanded. The maid turned to her lady, assuring her that the Duke would definitely find the culprit. Cernia chuckled and called out to Chelsea, saying she knew that and wasn't worried. Her lady thought coldly to herself that there were two things to verify, the culprit's alibi and motive. Let's think about it. When was the last time Byrne was seen today, she wondered. Cernia concluded that the nanny must have entered her room and found time to place the doll. She asked one of the maids about Byrne, and one of them told her that the last time they had seen her was during lunch when she was with Ariel in the dining hall. Cernia thought to herself, the tea time with the Duke was at 3 o'clock, and the incident happened shortly after the tea began. So the interval in question was between 1 p.m. and 3:10 p.m. Could that have been when the cursed doll was placed? Then her lady recalled that there had been no description of this red liquid in the novel. That was really fishy. Even if it were animal blood, its color wouldn't have stayed the same over time. Suddenly, Cernia heard footsteps approaching from behind. Her eyes widened in shock. Everyone was expected to gather with the Duke to find the culprit, so someone returning here must be the real perpetrator. It was Mrs. Byrne. Cernia immediately hid behind the curtain. She wondered why the nanny was back here. Her lady knew that if she poked her head out any longer, she'd be caught. She couldn't see exactly what the nanny was doing, and Mrs. Byrne was being sneaky. Just then, Dane came in and called out to Mrs. Byrne from behind, and she froze. "Weren't you supposed to call the other maids? What are you doing here?" the butler asked. Cernia was very excited to see this. At least she didn't have to confront her now. Mrs. Byrne, holding onto the bedsheets, smiled and said she was tidying up the place since the young lady had been startled earlier. Dane reminded her that the Duke had said nothing should be touched here. She replied that she knew, adding, "I was just lightly covering it with a cloth." But immediately she heard the Duke's voice asking if she was the one responsible, and if she was, she should confess. Mrs. Byrne's expression changed. She hadn't realized the Duke had come along. The Duke lifted the blanket and saw the red liquid soaking the bed. With its fishy scent, it's easy to mistake for blood, but this is ray-proof sap, the Duke said. "If it's ray-proof, then it must be the white flour from the greenhouse," Dane replied. His Grace nodded. "That's right. Its sticky, transparent secretions turn red when mixed with water. Commoners use it to dye fabrics." "This alone isn't enough to identify the culprit, but I noticed a mistake. Before that," the Duke said, turning toward the curtain where her lady was hiding. Cernia wondered what the Duke's mistake was and tried to stick her head out to hear, but the Duke immediately opened the curtain, startling her. "I told you to stay with the twins," His Grace said. She smiled. "I'm here because I wanted to help in some way." "Do you not trust me?" the Duke asked, leaving her lady confused. She told him that wasn't true. She explained that there was no one in the world she didn't trust because the Duke was famous for handling matters better than any sword. Cernia didn't even know when she blurted all that out. She couldn't believe she had spilled her words like that. Then she smiled and told him it was meant as a compliment. The Duke, glaring coldly, said, "It was good to hear." Cernia then asked the Duke what the nanny's mistake was. The Duke smiled. She thought to herself, that's his mischievous signature smile. It made her feel uneasy. He called her name and she answered. He told her that it seemed she was interested in magic and had been reading books related to it. Cernia shrugged. She thought to herself that she had always been a fan of fantasy magic novels. The Duke decided to ask her a question. "Magic is invisible, but it exists everywhere. However, it's not evenly distributed. Why is that?" he asked. Cernia thought to herself. She remembered reading about the correlation between magic and spirit arts. She told the Duke that everyone has a different level of magic affinity. "That's correct," the Duke said, "and magic affinity doesn't apply only to humans." He turned back toward the others. "There's a concentration of high-level magic. That's your mistake, Byrne." The nanny denied it. "I don't know anything about this and can't even see magic," she said. The Duke explained, "Exactly. Because you couldn't see magic, you made the mistake of mixing ray-proof sap with harganberries." "You added harganberries?" Dane shouted. Cernia thought to herself, "What's that?" The Duke explained that harganberries are poisonous when used alone, causing headaches and fever. Mrs. Byrne had added them to recreate the smell of blood and poison Cernia with it. Cernia gasped, "But when harganberries are mixed with ray-proof sap, they don't become poisonous, they turn into medicine," the Duke added, leaving Mrs. Byrne shocked. He explained that it was a magic power boost. Cernia was amazed by the fact that the Duke knew everything from curses to toxic and medicinal plants. "At this point, I'd believe it if someone said he's a magician instead of a sword master," she complimented. The Duke turned to her and said, "Shut up." She zipped her mouth, saying, "Yes, sir." Mrs. Byrne smiled mischievously, saying, "All this still doesn't prove that she's the culprit." "Madam, are you kidding me? Anyone could tell you're the culprit." The Duke asked her if she thought this was all the evidence he had. "You still don't understand why I gathered everyone together," he said confidently, telling her this was her last chance to confess for trying to harm a noble, which is a grave sin. "Woman, you better confess. I love this Duke already." The Duke turned away, asking her to confess quickly as her time was running out. His Grace opened the wardrobe and took out an apron alongside a glove. "You hid them hurriedly in the wardrobe because the maid cleaning the room arrived earlier than expected, the Duke said. But Byrne kept denying it, saying she knew nothing about it and that the apron had been stolen recently, so someone must have planted it to frame her. The Duke asked her if that was the only excuse she could make. At this point, Cernia could tell that there was more evidence and that Byrne needed to confess right now. She turned to the nanny, who was trembling so much in fear. Before they knew it, Mrs. Byrne went down on her knees, crying out and asking herself why on earth she had done it. "I followed exactly what the wizard told me, so why didn't it work?" she yelled. The Duke told her that curses require a price, and because she didn't offer any price, the curse didn't take effect. Mrs. Byrne cried out angrily, saying the wizard had told her that the liquid and the doll would serve as the price. The Duke glared at her. "You should be grateful to the wizard who taught you incorrectly. If you had paid a price for that curse, you would have ended up in the state of the doll. Why are they still conversing with this evil woman? She should be unalive already, don't you think?" Mrs. Byrne gritted her teeth bitterly, realizing she had failed in her plans and also gotten caught. The Duke approached her and withdrew his sword coldly, but paused immediately when Cernia stepped in. Cernia blocked him, wondering if he was actually going to execute the nanny. She called out to the Duke worriedly, and he stood still. "What is it?" he asked. Her lady asked him to allow her to decide the punishment for the nanny. The Duke reminded her that cursing a noble is a grave crime. Cernia told him it was attempted, not successful. "Oh, my lady, I don't agree with you on this, because if this nanny hadn't made this mistake, she would have succeeded in cursing you." Cernia turned to Mrs. Byrne coldly, saying she wanted to hear her reason before punishing her. Mrs. Byrne trembled as she confessed that if her lady hadn't been there, her child would have taken her place. Her lady was confused. She wondered who her child was, because the only information she knew about the nanny was that she had married into a viscount's family. "I've never seen your child visit before," Cernia said. Mrs. Byrne explained that her child was sick, and she couldn't afford to rest or pay for the expensive medicine. The Duchess said she was fine with her taking her child in too, but the Duke forbade it, saying she couldn't handle raising 4 children at once. So, if Lady Cernia hadn't been here, she would have had the opportunity to raise her child here in the mansion. Seeing the woman's expression, Cernia knew it wasn't a grand reason, but she could see the love she had for her child, which explained why she resented Cernia. The original Cernia, who was far more perceptive than her, must have noticed the nanny's subtle malice. Perhaps that was why she searched the room beforehand and must have found the cursed doll before the curse was activated, and that is how the incident unfolded. Cernia asked Mrs. Byrne to stand up, thinking to herself that she just needed someone to blame for everything, just like the original Cernia, who envied the twins. Instead of executing the nanny, Cernia made the decision to dismiss her from her position. Mrs. Byrne was shocked. Her lady added that she would keep today's incident a secret, but she was banned from working for the household, so she must return to the Viscount's estate and never appear in social circles again. Cernia made this decision because she wanted her to go back home and take good care of her child. Mrs. Byrne was touched by this act and couldn't hold herself back from crying and apologizing to her lady. Dane was touched too and exclaimed that her lady had really grown so much. Cernia chuckled, thinking to herself that it wasn't like anyone was harmed. The Duke stood behind her quietly, arms folded. Cernia was glad that at least she learned a narrative trick. The original novel could not be trusted word for word. Other maids came in and began cleaning up the room. The Duke turned to her lady, saying her room would be sealed. Cernia was surprised, and the Duke told her he didn't even like the fact that her room was at the end of the hallway, so he had already planned to move her. Excitedly, she wished her room would be right next to the twins. The Duke looked away, saying that if there was any furniture she needed, she shouldn't hesitate to ask Byrne. Cernia told him that whatever she had was enough for her, and she kept staring at the Duke's frowning face. Her lady then decided to ask His Grace if there was more evidence that proved Mrs. Byrne was the culprit. The Duke sighed, saying Byrne had used something that magically enhanced medicine, not a curse, so the magic surrounding her had increased. "So you noticed at first glance?" she said in amazement. The Duke glanced at her softly and she smiled, thinking to herself that the incident with the doll had finally come to an end. Winter at the Duke's estate passed, and spring arrived. Unlike the original Cernia, who passed away at 12, our girl was still alive at 17 years old. "Oh, wow, Cernia is really growing into a very beautiful young lady." Here, her lady thought to herself that surviving was good, but she was worried about an upcoming event from the original story, the Crown Prince's banquet. At this banquet, Ariel falls at first sight with Crown Prince Helios and becomes the villainess of Cinderella doesn't wear glass heels. Cernia was confused. She didn't know how to stop her favorite twin from falling in love with the prince at first sight. Recently, she had been consistently bad-mouthing the crown prince, and Ariel stood her ground saying she didn't like that crown prince either since her sister didn't like him. But you and I know that love is not something the mouth controls, but the heart. "I'm worried," Cernia lamented. Immediately, she overheard the twins calling out to her from behind. When she turned, they began questioning why she was late as they struggled with each other over who would reach her first. The twins told her how they listened carefully in class and couldn't wait for lessons to end so they could come and spend time with her. The two troublesome twins smiled happily, asking her to praise them. These twins haven't grown up at all. They're still so childish, and I love that. Cernia patted their heads cutely and affectionately, thinking to herself that they were 15 years old but still liked being praised. As if that wasn't enough, Ariel told Cernia not to get married and to stay with her forever. Ariel yelled at her to get lost, stating that Cernia would stay with him instead. Cernia tried to calm the situation as usual, saying they would all live together forever like they are now. Little did she know that Ariel didn't want that. Ariel told her openly that she didn't want to live together forever with her brother, but if Cernia said so, then she would try to tolerate him. At this point, I don't think these twins are ever getting along. Do all twins behave like this? Ariel yelled at Ariel, saying he didn't like her either, and if Cernia wasn't here, he wouldn't want to be with someone like her for even a second. Cernia couldn't watch this. She tried to remind them how precious family was and that they should treasure each other's existence. She smiled, telling them they were irreplaceable siblings. Hearing that, they stopped arguing and turned to her, calling her name softly. "You're my family too, and you're the most precious to me," Ariel said softly. Ariel added that they were connected by blood, too. Cernia thought to herself that wasn't what she meant, because it was obvious now that the twins thought she felt lonely since she had lost both her parents. Cernia held their hands, saying she had been worried and that they were the most precious to her. They were so pleased to hear her say that, and she couldn't help thinking to herself that they were just like puppies. They all sat down for coffee and talked happily. Ariel excitedly said she wanted to wear matching outfits with Cernia to the birthday banquet. Hearing about the banquet, Cernia froze and said she wasn't going. Ariel was shocked and asked curiously why she wasn't going with her. Cernia thought to herself that in the original story, even the real Cernia couldn't attend the banquet, and she couldn't tell her that. "Girl, that's enough reason why you should go. You aren't following the original anymore." Cernia told the twins that she was sick and had a cough. She immediately began coughing to suit the lie, asking both of them to go and have fun at the banquet. Ariel asked how she expected them to go have fun when she was sick. He concluded that he wasn't going either. Ariel added that she wasn't going as well. Immediately, the Duke walked in from behind, shouting, "No!" Cernia turned to the Duke, thinking to herself that he looked handsome today, too. If only they weren't related by blood. I wish she'd marry him and become the twins' stepmother because he's so cute. The Duke immediately announced that everyone must attend the banquet. Cernia complained about her sickness, and Ariel coldly told the Duke, while holding on to Cernia, that she wouldn't allow her to push herself to go when she was sick. The Duke immediately suggested calling a priest, and Cernia panicked, thinking to herself why he suggested a priest instead of a doctor. This Duke is so smart. He could tell she needed deliverance. Cernia smiled anxiously, saying she would be fine if she rested properly, begging in her mind for him to leave. The Duke told her to get proper rest and make sure to attend the banquet. At this moment, Cernia thought to herself that she had no other choice than to play her final card. Usually, a big party requires an invitation, even within the same family. Not everyone gets invited, and thankfully, she was one of the people who wasn't invited to this banquet. "Actually, I didn't receive an invitation from the imperial family," she pointed out, leaving everyone shocked, including the Duke. Ariel said sadly that there was no need for Cernia to go to a party she wasn't invited to. Ariel angrily said that the imperial family didn't even deserve to see her. Watching how angry the twins were getting, Cernia knew this wasn't what she planned. She only didn't want to go. How dare they not send an invitation to my sister, Ariel gritted. Cernia waited for the Duke to make the final decision and tell her not to go, but instead he smiled and said it didn't matter because no one could stop the Ardentine family, so she should get ready and go with them. Oops, her plans just got ruined. As expected, she knew the Duke was the biggest problem. She forced a smile, thinking to herself that she was now being forced to attend the banquet. Wow, it's so pretty, the maids praised as soon as Cernia put on her banquet dress. I must say, her lady is looking like the star of the show. Cernia thought to herself that it felt like a wedding dress. Chelsea told her that the dress was prepared personally by the Duke, which surprised her. She imagined the Duke choosing it himself and couldn't help thinking it must be a joke. Chelsea told her she wasn't joking at all. The Duke personally chose the dress for her. Cernia's expression softened, and she thought to herself that she really needed to thank him later. Immediately, Ariel shouted from the door asking if they should come in now. Hearing that, Cernia smiled and told them to come in. They opened the door and rushed in, fully dressed as well. Cernia, you look so beautiful, Ariel shouted in amazement. Ariel immediately interrupted, saying Cernia had always been beautiful. Ariel glanced at him and said, "That's true, but this is the first time seeing her in a ball dress like this." They both held her affectionately, saying she would definitely be the most beautiful person at the banquet. Cernia smiled and complimented them as well on how dazzling they both looked. Ariel smiled happily, saying she was glad Cernia thought she was pretty too. Cernia told her softly that she had always been beautiful. Ariel immediately asked, "What about me?" Cernia told him he was dashing as well. Just then, Dane stepped in and informed them that the carriage was ready. As she stepped out to enter the carriage, Cernia thought to herself that she had always been anxious about attending this banquet, but it was obvious that fate had set it this way, and after all, she had cared for the twins with her whole heart, hoping it wouldn't end like the original story. While in the carriage, looking at the twins, she wondered if the plot in this life would actually go the same way as the original, and if the twins would still end up as villains. She wondered if her being alive would even become an obstacle for them in the future, which is why she had always avoided leaving the Duke's mansion. Today was the first time she was stepping outside. Upon arriving, the Duke helped her out, and she was amazed when she saw the grand entrance of the Imperial Palace. As soon as they entered, their arrival was announced, and everyone turned to watch. Her lady thought to herself anxiously that the attention was overwhelming. The Duke held her arm firmly, telling her to stand up straight because there was no one here she should fear. She couldn't believe that her trembling was that obvious. She smiled and said it was reassuring that he was with her, just as the Duke was about to say something. Suddenly, the arrival of the Emperor and the Crown Prince was announced, and everyone bowed, including Cernia and the Duke. His Majesty asked everyone to lift their heads. He smiled warmly, thanking everyone for coming to celebrate the Crown Prince's birthday. Seeing how chubby and short the Emperor was, Cernia thought to herself that he looked like a principal. Standing beside him was a tall young man with silver hair and golden eyes. She thought to herself that he must be the Crown Prince. He was just as handsome as the book described. Helios glanced at Cernia from the crowd, and his eyes widened in shock. His Majesty announced that the celebration should begin, and immediately, Cernia couldn't believe that her eyes had just met with the Crown Prince's. Suddenly, someone pushed Cernia, and she almost fell. It was Ariel. Ariel told Cernia to hide behind their father because it seems like the Crown Prince was looking for a dance partner since he didn't have a fiancé yet. Cernia told her it wasn't possible for the Crown Prince to choose to dance with her when there were so many other beauties at the banquet. Ariel told her she should be worried because she was one of the beauties there. Immediately, Ariel appeared and asked Cernia to dance with him. Ariel stepped in angrily, saying she would be the one to dance with Cernia. Here goes the drama again. I can't believe they're literally fighting over who gets to dance with her. Cernia tried to stop them from fighting because so many eyes were on them, but then the Duke suddenly said, "The Crown Prince has already chosen his dance partner." They all turned in shock. The Duke then asked her lady if she wanted to dance with the Crown Prince, but she immediately said no. "Then who will you dance with?" he asked. Cernia thought to herself that she needed to dance with someone safe, but the twins were looking so cutely. Who was she even supposed to pick now? Cernia smiled mischievously, turned to the Duke, grabbed his hand, and said she would dance with him instead. Obviously, she needed to choose the most powerful person in the room. Oh, my poor twins! They'll be so disappointed, and I doubt they'd agree to dance with each other. While dancing with the Duke, he told her to look only into his eyes and nowhere else. Her lady followed his command and looked at him the entire time. The Duke hesitated sadly as they danced. What could be bothering him? The dance went on and everyone moved with their partners. Just then, the Duke called out to her and she trembled, asking what was wrong. He looked straight into her eyes and asked how long she planned to keep calling him Duke. I thought about that too. It's so awkward and formal. Maybe call him Dad? Cernia was surprised. It was literally the first time she was seeing the Duke express his emotions. She asked if she should call him Uncle instead, but that felt weird too, though it was actually better than always calling him Duke. Just as she called him Uncle, she accidentally stepped on his foot while they danced. She quickly apologized, calling him Uncle again in panic. The Duke smiled, saying he was glad she had at least upgraded from calling him Duke. The song ended and they bowed. As they walked back, Cernia could tell the Duke was actually happy. At a corner, a girl with orange hair glared at Cernia, gritting her teeth angrily. Who's this? Our girl has already gained an enemy. This is bad. Ariel rushed over, saying she would be Cernia's next dance partner. Cernia could tell that she and Ariel had already played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would dance with her next. They moved to the center, and her lady asked who would lead. Ariel smiled mischievously and took the lead happily, just as expected of a future socialite queen. They danced happily to the rhythm, and Ariel told her to calm down because she almost stepped on her, too. Cernia told her she had stepped on the Duke's foot earlier because she was nervous. She asked why Ariel didn't stop her, knowing she was nervous and that it might happen. Ariel reminded her she tried to be her dance partner first, but Cernia chose the Duke instead. Seeing Ariel pout childishly, Cernia couldn't stop herself from laughing. Ariel smiled and said she would have been bored to death if Cernia hadn't come. Cernia suggested they make friends since many noble ladies were gathered there, but Ariel refused immediately, saying she only wanted her sister and no one else. Cernia smiled and said she wanted Ariel to see the world and meet other people. Ariel said sadly that she only wanted her sister. Cernia leaned her head closer and softly assured her that she wasn't going anywhere and would stay, just like she promised. As soon as the second dance ended, Ariel rushed over saying it was his turn, but by then, Cernia was already tired from dancing too much, and they suggested she rest. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, and they all turned. "You are the hidden treasure of the Ardentine family," the Crown Prince said as he approached. He smiled brightly, and they all bowed to the descendant of the sun. Ariel replied coldly, saying yes, since Helios would be the future head of the empire. Helios acknowledged Ariel as well, but she remained hostile. He smiled and asked Cernia to dance with him next. The twins stood beside her like armor, glaring at the Crown Prince as he reached out his hand. Looking at him, Cernia thought to herself, according to the book, Helios found palace banquets boring. Immediately, Ariel spoke up, saying his sister had already promised to dance with him. Helios cut him off sharply, saying he didn't ask him. Cernia bowed politely, apologizing and saying she had already promised to dance with the twins since a week ago and hoped he would understand. Then she left with Ariel, leaving Helios and Ariel behind. Cernia exhaled worriedly as they walked away, saying she was worried about Ariel. Ariel told her not to worry, saying he was sure his sister would find her way out. They parted ways from dancing since Cernia was already tired, and Ariel assured her the Crown Prince wouldn't notice. Cernia decided to take a walk and look for Ariel, but as she walked, that same young lady appeared and asked if she was looking for Lady Ariel, adding that Ariel had gone to the garden. Cernia paused and thanked the bitter-looking girl for telling her where Ariel was. "I don't feel good about this." Stepping into the garden, the full moon shone brightly above. Cernia looked up with relief, thinking about how much time had passed. Hearing someone approach, she turned, happily, thinking it was Ariel. Instead, someone suddenly pushed her, and she fell straight into the pool. "I knew this was a bad idea. It must be that girl earlier. But why is she doing this? Who could she be?" Let's find out. Thanks. As Cernia was falling into the pond, she saw the dress of the one who pushed her, and it looked familiar. Cernia couldn't even swim because the dress was too heavy, and she wondered if she was really going to drown in this life, too. Just then, someone grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the pond, and she breathed out in relief. Cernia held onto the person's shoulder, thinking to herself that it was a shallow pond. She sighed at how embarrassing that actually was. She looked up and thanked the person, only to see a young man with black hair. Black hair was something that absolutely couldn't exist in a human form in this world. It was a color born from bad omens and calamity. She remembered that only one person like that existed in this world, and it was Sirius. Sirius was the sub-male lead of the original novel, and also Helios's half-brother. He inherited the curse the Empress placed upon the concubine, leaving him unable to feel emotions and making him a truly tragic prince. Sirius turned away to leave, and she called out to him immediately, saying if he really wanted to save someone, then he should do it all the way. He glanced at her, saying the pond wasn't even deep enough for her to stand on her own. She told him clearly that the dress was heavy, and if he hadn't pulled her out, then she would have drowned. He approached her and asked why he even saved her. She asked in confusion how she expected her to know. She suddenly shouted and reached out her hands to him, asking him to help her. He held her hand, and before she knew it, he lifted her and carried her into his arms, taking her out of the water. She thanked him, and he told her she owed him now, unless she was planning on pretending that nothing happened. Cernia thought to herself that he couldn't believe he was turning it into a debt. She smiled, stating that he saved her life and it was only right to repay him. Sirius told her to surely repay him with something he wanted. At that moment, she wondered what that could actually be. "What do you want?" she asked with a smile, and immediately she heard some voices coming from behind. On turning, it was her family. Ariel and Ariel called out to her as they ran towards her, and the Duke followed from behind. The twins were holding on to her worriedly, and her uncle asked if she was all right because he heard that she fell into the pond. How did they hear that? That's weird. Cernia smiled, turning behind and saying it was because of the young man. She thought to herself, they hadn't even introduced themselves yet. Cernia told her uncle that this gentleman saved her, and the Duke bowed to Prince Sirius, greeting him properly as the glory of the Empire, the descendant of the sun. He thanked him for saving Cernia, and also added that he would make a proper visit to the palace to thank him, because right now they had to leave before his niece caught a cold. Her uncle carried her in his arms, and she called out to him, saying, "I can walk on my own." The twins were still worried about her as they walked behind. Ariel told Cernia how shocked he was when Miss Canarine suddenly showed up and said she fell into the pond. Cernia wondered who that was, and then she recalled that the woman who spoke to her back there was actually Lady Canarine. The Duke asked her what was wrong, and she chuckled, saying it was nothing. The Duke glanced at her in confusion, and she wondered why Sirius actually got worried she might have been hurt. She knew she wanted to ask why so badly. Sirius, on the other hand, thought to himself that he only meant to watch because it was shallow enough for her to stand on her own, but somehow his thoughts didn't align with his actions because he never meant to reach out to her. He found it really strange that he actually saved someone and remembered asking why he saved her because his curse hadn't been lifted, so why the hell did he react to her? He remembered how her shimmering gray eyes shone under the moonlight and how her voice was so soft and free of hesitation. He knew he wanted to look at her some more and wanted her to look at him too, but her family showed up and he couldn't have her eyes looking at him only. His point of view is really strong on the first night, and I must say it seems he's fallen in love with our girl. The birthday banquet ended peacefully, and after they left that night, the Duke's family began returning to their normal lives. Everything seemed calm until an unexpected visitor showed up at the mansion. It was Canarine Jafane, the 15-year-old daughter of Count Jafane. According to the novel, Cernia could remember that she was the type who craved success and was very jealous and ambitious, and she was also a supporting character. She was the one who sucked up to Ariel and played the role of the enabler, so in other words, she was Ariel's right-hand villainess. Canarine sat across from her, glaring at her quietly, and Cernia smiled, asking what brought her here. She couldn't help thinking to herself what this villainous character could possibly want with her. It's obvious that Lady Canarine was the one who pushed her that night, because her dress was the last thing Cernia saw when she fell into the pond. Lady Canarine told Cernia she had come to apologize for what happened at the birthday banquet. Cernia recalled that she was the one in the yellow dress who pushed her into the pond, but she still found it strange because she didn't expect her to come directly and apologize like this. "I'm sorry, Lady Cernia. I did that because I was jealous of you," she said, leaving Cernia shocked. Who goes around telling others to their face that they're jealous of them? This girl is really weird. Cernia asked why she was even jealous when she wasn't even in the direct line of the Duke's family, so there was nothing about her that she should envy. Canarine told her that Cernia had something she had never gotten in her life, and that was family love, which made her really jealous of her. It's really crazy how people envy someone for what they actually worked really hard for. She told her that she envied her because she laughed after stepping on the Duke's feet, which showed how free and loved she was. Cernia felt a wave of embarrassment hearing her say that because she didn't think anyone saw that embarrassing moment. Lady Canarine told her it was just meant to be a surprise at the shallow pond, and she didn't know she would drown in it. That's why she had to run and call for him. Cernia felt a second wave of embarrassment, which was not being able to even stand up from a shallow pond. Not only did she step on the Duke's feet, she also made a scene. Lady Canarine suddenly burst into tears, saying she was really sorry. Cernia thought to herself that even before being reincarnated into the novel, there were many kids who did bad things for fun, and Lady Canarine might not have done the right thing, but at least she had the decency to apologize in person. Cernia got it from her seat and hugged Canarine, telling her it was okay. Canarine was completely shocked. "I feel sorry for her. She better not get caught by the twins, because their jealousy is way worse than hers." Canarine, after receiving such a warm hug, opened up and said she got scolded by her father that day too, and she was literally just a mere tool meant to help her family's achievements, yet they still saw the money they spent on her as a waste. "That's why being genuinely loved and even laughing when you made a mistake really made me envy you, Cernia," she cried. It was then that Cernia realized the jealousy Canarine felt in the original novel was because she wanted to prove her worth to her family. She was literally just a child who desperately struggled to survive and be loved. Cernia held on to her, hoping that her forgiveness could at least give her a little comfort. After that day, some invitations came, and Ariel showed up angry, telling Cernia she heard Lady Canarine came to apologize. She added that she was still mad at her. Seeing this, Cernia thanked goodness that before Ariel caused any trouble, Lady Canarine had already come and confessed. At first, after realizing that it was Lady Canarine who pushed her, it felt like Ariel was up to something. Cernia chuckled and showed her a letter from the young lady, and Ariel told her not to brush it aside with a laugh. Cernia sighed, saying it wasn't working. Then Ariel showed Cernia a letter of acceptance from the academy. "It's time for you to enter the academy," she said, and Ariel replied sadly, saying it would be nice if she could go too. Cernia chuckled, saying she had already given up on enrolling, and Ariel remained sad. Cernia thought to herself that she turned down her admission last year, and it wasn't like she didn't want to go, but Daisy, the main character, would be there at the academy, and she was really pretty. The academy was only for 2 years, and if she enrolled, then she would have to graduate by the time the twins started. Cernia told Ariel that if she went to the academy, then she would end up wasting a lot of time, and she only wanted to spend that time with them rather than at the academy. The truth is that all the love Cernia is experiencing now, she literally earned it with all the sacrifices she's made for her family. Ariel reached out her hand and grabbed hers, saying she knew it was childish, but she really wanted to be with Cernia more. Just then, the butler came in and announced to her lady that the Duke was looking for her. In the Duke's office, he told her he was going to the palace tomorrow, he wanted to thank him for what happened before, and he asked her if she was going. Cernia, watching how the Duke spoke, couldn't help chuckling and said she would call along. He told her to do as she pleased, and Cernia wondered why he was looking at her like that. Her uncle asked if she had anything more to say. She chuckled and asked if she needed to bring anything along, like a juice, to properly greet them. "Since they saved your life, it's better to repay them with something of equal value," he said, and she panicked in shock, asking if he just said something as equal as a life. The Duke told her to close her mouth, and she shut it immediately. These two are really funny in a weird way. Cernia smiled and suggested if it would be all right for her to personally prepare something to Prince Sirius. The Duke told her that would be fine, he would prepare a gift for His Majesty, and she would prepare the gift for the prince. "Can Ariel come along?" she asked, and he sighed, saying she should, because even if it wasn't allowed, she would probably still show up. Cernia headed back to her room first and sat down, thinking to herself that she had already prepared what to give to Prince Sirius. She opened her drawer, took out something from a box, and smiled, saying it would help with Sirius's curse. The gift was actually a spirit stone imbued with the power of the water spirit. The shimmering spiritual energy within the stone resembled the color of Daisy's eyes. Sirius's curse, which was mediated through spirits, weakened in places where the presence of spiritual energy was strong. It was only natural that Sirius was drawn to Daisy, who was loved by the spirits. Cernia recalled that it was Daisy's friend, Elisa, who revealed the truth about his curse. As someone with no connections to spirits, the only thing she could do was offer a spirit stone as a temporary measure. Just then, she remembered that if she went into the palace to deliver the spirit stone, she might run into the Empress. It was the Empress who cursed the Emperor's other pregnant wife, tainting even Sirius with the curse. She also taught the curse to Ariel, who was blinded by jealousy. Cernia was shocked when she remembered that the final villain was actually the Empress. She instantly knew that the first thing to do was to avoid the Empress as much as possible. For other than the twins, the original characters had no place in her life. For a life without turbulence. For an easy life. The next day, they all arrived at the palace and greeted the Emperor, the descendant of the sun. The Emperor chuckled, saying, "It seems like all the Duke's children are clever," which meant the Empire's future is bright. The Duke thanked him, reaching out with his token of appreciation and gratitude. The Emperor was surprised when he saw what was inside and asked if it was really the Triska tears. It was a treasure infused with the energy of the Fire Spirit King. The Emperor's eyes widened as he remembered something. He told the Duke they needed to speak privately since he was here now, so it wouldn't be a hassle the next time they met. The Duke glared at him and then agreed. Cernia could tell that her uncle looked quite annoyed, so she knew she had to be careful. She called out to Ariel and Ariel, saying they would leave first. One of the palace maids showed up and offered to guide them to Prince Sirius's palace. Her lady and the twins followed, and Cernia told the Duke seemed quite annoyed, and she hoped he would calm down by the time they got on the carriage. Ariel chuckled, saying he probably wouldn't say much to them, but Ariel might end up getting dragged to the training grounds. Hearing Ariel laugh like that, Cernia couldn't help thinking to herself that it really bothered her to see the Duke annoyed, because they usually ended up having silent tea time, and it was never funny. They kept walking through the garden, and Cernia sighed, saying it felt like they had been walking for a long time and still hadn't reached their destination. The maid smiled, saying they had come this far and it was only a bit further ahead. Cernia couldn't help thinking to herself that she still had half of the day to go. She mumbled to herself that she walked often, but why was her stamina still the same? Just then, her eyes widened when she heard a rustling sound from the grass. Ariel blocked them immediately, asking who was there. Cernia noticed a small opening, and they heard a voice calling out for help. Cernia went forward and entered the bushes while lifting her dress, leaving them shocked. She saw a girl with yellow hair crying, her leg sprained. Cernia asked if she was all right, but she didn't respond and kept rubbing her injured leg. Cernia reached out and saw that the leg was actually bleeding. The girl complained that it was uncomfortable. Cernia placed her handkerchief on the leg and asked her to please be patient. The girl was in pain, and Cernia noticed that the blood was soaking the handkerchief. Ariel showed up and informed Cernia that she told the maids to inform the palace that a young lady was injured, so they should wait a little and a knight or a doctor would soon come. Cernia said that was a relief and turned to the young lady, saying she must have been shocked. Cernia is too nice to everyone. Cernia chuckled and said she hadn't introduced herself yet. She told the young lady that she was Cernia Ardentine, and the lady was surprised. She remembered that today was the day the Duke of Ardentine was having an audience with the Emperor. She wasn't sure why the Duke's children were here, but one thing she was sure of was that they were kind. She thanked Cernia for helping her, and Cernia leaned closer and asked what her name was. "I'm Bella," the young girl said with a happy smile. "I'm Bella Kalin." Cernia called her by her name and sat on the ground with her. Ariel and Ariel panicked when they saw her sit on the ground. "Sister, at least put a handkerchief down before sitting," Ariel said, and Cernia replied that she didn't have a handkerchief. The twins reached out to her at the same time, both holding handkerchiefs in their hands and telling her to use them. They glared at each other for acting at the same time. Cernia couldn't believe they were about to fight again. Instead of letting them fight, she told them she would use both of their handkerchiefs. Cernia called out to Lady Bella, and she answered in confusion. Cernia offered to wrap her leg with one of the handkerchiefs around the injured area. Then she brought out the energy stone and decided to use the remaining handkerchief to wrap it. She wrapped it immediately and asked Bella to use it just for a moment and place it over her eyes. Lady Bella did just that, and Cernia smiled, asking if it felt cooler since her eyes had been red since earlier. Bella smiled and said it felt refreshing, and she couldn't help thinking to herself that His Highness, the Crown Prince, had once found her like this too. When she had fallen down before, he called out to her and found her sitting on the ground crying. He reached out his hands to her and she couldn't hold back her tears. He asked if she was all right and she jumped into his arms. He was literally like the prince from fairy tales. Since she had held on to this love for so long, she recognized it immediately. Helios had interested in Ardentine because at the banquet, the two of them looked so perfect together that she could understand why His Highness was interested. She told herself not to be greedy and promised to be satisfied just by being by Helios' side. She tried as much as possible to calm her heart, but she couldn't help feeling uneasy about His Highness taking interest in the Ardentine house. But now it felt even stranger because the person she didn't want to see was right in front of her, and yet it didn't hate it. Instead, it felt comforting. Cernia turned to Ariel and Ariel, asking if they wouldn't introduce themselves. Ariel told Cernia they already greeted her at the banquet, and Ariel added that she wasn't there at that time. Cernia smiled, thinking to herself that it's because she was drowning at that time. Lady Bella told Cernia sadly that she was really impressed by her dancing and that she looked really good together with Helios. Cernia was surprised and turned to Ariel, asking if she danced with the Crown Prince. Ariel sighed and said she did, and it was because His Majesty the Emperor instructed it. Seriously? Why did no one tell me such an important detail? This is crazy. Cernia thought to herself that in the original story, they never mentioned that they danced together, and then the cursed doll incident happened, and she ended up attending the Crown Prince's banquet. She wondered if events in the original always had to repeat themselves. After a while, someone came rushing in, calling out to Bella. It was Lady Bella's brother. He rushed to her and asked if she was hurt, and she replied that her leg only hurt a little. "Your leg again?" he asked wordly, and immediately turned, asking her to get on his back. The sibling relationships in this novel are really top-notch. He carried his sister on his back and thanked Lady Cernia for helping her, and he also apologized for not introducing himself sooner, and told her his name was Grend Juan Kylan. He was from Marquis Kylan's household and was 15 years old. Helios showed up, saying he would express his gratitude too because Bella was like his little sister too. Poor Bella, she's in love with a man who regards her as a little sister. They all bowed to the Crown Prince, and Helios smiled at Cernia, saying they met again. Ariel immediately blocked her, telling him to stop staring at her or he'd end up wearing out her face. Cernia told her not to worry because her face is thicker than iron. Helios asked why she thought he, the Crown Prince, would wear out her face just by looking at her. Ariel yelled that she wouldn't allow that. Helios asked if he even needed her permission to look at her. Cernia called out to Ariel, asking him to stop Ariel. Ariel told her he understood, but he ended up shouting at the Crown Prince, saying his sister didn't want to see his face. These twins are really something else. Cernia felt like going crazy because that wasn't what she meant. Even you, Ariel, she lamented. Bella apologized, saying Cernia looked really adorable and it was really funny. Helios burst into laughter, saying Lady Cernia is indeed cute. Cernia sighed, saying with everyone complimenting her like this, she really didn't know where to put herself. Cernia excused herself, saying she had to go and meet Prince Sirius. She thought to herself that it was better to get away from there immediately, because being surrounded by the twins and getting teased by Helios was really bad. "What a shame. I look forward to seeing you again," Helios said, and she smiled, thinking to herself, thanks, but no thanks. Our girl really doesn't want to have anything to do with him. On getting to Prince Sirius's palace, Cernia wondered if it was really his palace, because it looked so neglected from the outside, but the inside wasn't that bad. They saw Sirius, and he smiled, welcoming them, saying they must have had a hard time coming all the way. "I'm Sirius Aslandi," he introduced. Sirius was actually the 15th prince of the empire. His emotionless smile and mechanical gestures were exactly how Sirius was in the novel. Cernia sat there mumbling to herself that it was a little strange when she first met him. She told him she wanted to express her gratitude as soon as possible, and she also apologized for coming so suddenly. He chuckled and said he wanted to see her as well. Cernia thought to herself that it indeed was strange. The prince's palace looked like it was hastily tidied up inside, and even the attendants didn't seem like permanent staff. Cernia took her tea and turned to him, saying it had a nice fragrance. He asked if it really did, thinking to himself, so this is what a good fragrance is supposed to be. Cernia could tell it was obvious he didn't even have tea time. Sirius suggested she try the cake as well, saying it was a bit too sweet for his taste because he didn't like sweet things. Cernia, watching all this, couldn't believe that even tea and cake were unfamiliar to him. She wished she could really take him away from the Empress and bring him to her duchy. She sighed and didn't know when she spoke out loud, saying he was not a puppy, so there was no way she could take him away so easily. A puppy? He asked in confusion. She quickly covered up, saying she suddenly felt like raising a puppy. Sirius asked if she liked dogs and stood up immediately when she said she did. She wondered where he was going, and before she knew it, he disappeared, leaving her with a questioning expression. Ariel told her it seemed like someone teleported and asked in surprise if he went through the palace barrier. Cernia mumbled to herself that he was a genius capable of breaking through the Imperial Palace barrier. Sirius appeared again with a black puppy in his hands and handed it to her since she said she wanted to raise a puppy. Cernia sighed, saying she appreciated it, but she still needed the Duke's permission before she could take it with her. Sirius and the dog looked at her cutely, almost like pitiful creatures, as if asking if she was really going to abandon this. I feel like the puppy looks like him. Cernia couldn't resist their cuteness and agreed to take it with her since she had no other choice. She thanked him again and brought out her own gift for him. He held it in his hand and smiled, saying he would keep it and cherish it well. Cernia noticed a glow on his face and was surprised, wondering what that was, or if it was just her imagination. Ariel brought out their own gift for him, and the maid collected it. They smiled and told him it was a sword. Cernia had allowed the twins to come together since they also had a gift for the prince. Sirius thanked him and ordered the maid to hold it. Cernia wondered why he didn't unwrap it, because she knew for sure it was a good sword. Then we should be taking our leave now, Cernia said, and he asked if she was already leaving. Cernia wondered why he looked disappointed that they were leaving and concluded again that it must be her imagination. Girl, you've been imagining quite a lot, don't you think? She concluded that his acting, even while being emotionless, really deserved a Best Actor award. Cernia, while holding the puppy, smiled happily and said she would see him again next time. Next time, he asked, and couldn't help thinking to himself that she just said next time. They returned to the Ardentine ducal house, and the Duke kept looking at the dog on the table. Cernia told him nervously that the prince had given it to her, and he asked if she was really planning on keeping it. She told him it wouldn't be nice to abandon it, and he replied that he forbade it. Cernia begged piteously, asking why she couldn't just keep it. She kept begging, calling him uncle, and he finally agreed because he literally couldn't resist her cuteness. Fine, but it's not allowed in your room, he said. She agreed happily, saying she would keep it in the yard. She leaned closer, thanking him happily as he held the dog and looked at her. She caressed the dog, saying it was really great. She turned to the twins and asked what they should name it. Ariel suggested they name it Black Iron since it was black, and Ariel added that they should name it Black Ink. That's so cruel. How could they suggest such awful names for a cute dog like this? Ariel glared at him, asking who names a dog Ink, and he glared back, asking who names a dog Black Iron either. Asking them to suggest names was not a good idea to begin with. Cernia turned to the window and suggested they call it Night instead, since it's black like the night sky, she said. And Ariel smiled cutely, saying it was really cute. Ariel, with his arms folded, pointed out that her naming sense wasn't that great either. But it's better than you twins, right? Ariel stepped on his toes and he groaned. She told Cernia they would go with the name she wanted. Cernia looked at Night, saying he had officially been named and his name was Night. He barked at her cutely in acceptance and she cuddled him, thinking to herself, with this puppy around, even when the twins went to the academy, I won't be lonely. I find it really weird that she isn't going to the academy because she doesn't want to run into the female lead. A letter came from the J. Fane estate, not from Canarine, but from her father, inviting Cernia to the mansion. Canarine told Cernia to decline the invitation, but Cernia didn't listen and decided to go to the mansion regardless. The J. Fane Count's estate was originally a Viscount family, but 3 generations ago, a gold mine was discovered in their territory, elevating them to a count house. They were known for excessive vanity and often looked down on poorer nobles. Their reputation among the aristocrats was not great, and all this was because of Canarine, the most beautiful woman in the world. After her apology last week, Canarine had been sending Cernia letters non-stop every week. Through their exchanges, they became friends. When the Count learned about their relationship, he invited her to his mansion. In the carriage, Cernia mumbled to herself that Canarine had instructed her to refuse the invitation, but she wondered if Lady Canarine really thought of her as a friend because she was her first friend. Upon arriving at their mansion, she saw Count J. Fane outside, faking a smile as he welcomed her. Her lady bowed as he said they had been waiting for her. She introduced herself, saying it was an honor meeting him. The Count looked behind her, saw no one else, and then asked where were the others, or if she came alone. Cernia told him she came alone and asked if they would continue the conversation outside. The Count frowned immediately, turned away, and told her she was welcome and that Canarine was waiting inside for her. That's strange. Did he actually expect her to come with her bodyguards? The servant bowed and said he would guide her to Lady Canarine's room. Cernia watched the Count leave without looking back and figured out that the Count's true target wasn't her, but Ariel. Using Canarine, he wanted to form an alliance with the Duke's house through marriage. Too bad she came alone. The servant led her all the way, and she couldn't help observing the surroundings. She mumbled to herself that there were lots of things, but it wasn't pretty. It was just all over the place and messy. The servant announced their arrival at the lady's door, and Canarine, who was sitting near the window, asked them to come in. Immediately, she saw Cernia and was surprised. She rushed over to her, asking why she was here when she literally told her to refuse. "Did my father say anything to you?" she asked, and Cernia chuckled, saying he didn't say much. Canarine apologized, explaining that her father asked her to stay in her room, that's why she couldn't come and greet her. Cernia told her it was fine, and seeing her again after a long time made her really happy. Canarine smiled, saying she was also happy seeing her. Judging by how Canarine's room looked, Cernia could tell that the reception was so simple compared to the rest of the house. It was now obvious to her that Count J. Fine only decorated the areas that others could see. Cernia suggested they go for a simple walk outside, but Canarine explained that her father didn't like it when she wandered around the house. Her lady was surprised. A father who disliked seeing his own daughter walk around her own home? Then let's just chat in your room, Cernia decided, and Canarine smiled, saying that sounded good because she prepared her favorite Mont Blanc cake since she was coming. While eating, Canarine told her how she asked the chef to make the best Mont Blanc and tea. Cernia took a bite and said it was actually really good. Canarine felt relieved that she liked it. She held her tea and said that next week marks the end of the year. "Have you finished preparing for the National Foundation Festival?" she asked. Cernia chuckled, saying she went to the tailor's last week with the twins. Canarine praised her, saying she would look stunning in any dress. Cernia chuckled, saying it would be her first festival with a friend. "What about your dress, Canarine?" she asked, and she replied that she didn't have an idea yet, but her father always picked the most expensive dress from his tailor. Hearing this, Cernia couldn't believe they actually let a men's tailor choose for a noble lady. She felt sad that Canarine didn't get to choose her own clothes. Cernia sighed, thinking about how he only cared about what was most expensive. Seeing Cernia's expression, Canarine asked if something was bothering her, but Cernia couldn't really tell her that she was worried about her. She covered it up by saying the twins would soon be joining the academy, and she was worried about them. Canarine remembered how obsessed the twins were, and she said she could tell that they would bite anyone who touched her sister. She told Cernia that if it was them, she didn't have to worry, because she was sure they would be fine. Like, girl, why wouldn't they be? After all, they have each other. Canarine told Cernia she was glad she came to her house and apologized, saying if she hadn't come, they would never have become friends. She suddenly shouted Cernia's name, which startled her. "What is it?" Cernia asked, and Canarine nervously asked if she could call her by her nickname. "My mother used to call me Kana. It's the name of a small yellow flower that blooms together," she said. Leaving Cernia surprised, Canarine sadly explained that her mother passed away 5 years ago after giving birth to her sibling. She came from a count's family but was poor, and her father always said he should have married someone else, and now he's repeating it to her. So, after her mother passed away, no one had called her that name. Close friends call each other by their nicknames, don't they? And you're my first friend, Cernia, so if you don't mind, can you call me Kana? Canarine said softly with a sad expression. Poor girl, she's been through a lot. If she ends up becoming a villain, it's not her fault. Life pushed her into it. Cernia smiled and said of course she would call her that. After all, she was her first friend too. From now on, she agreed to call her Kana, so she should stop being sad and smile. I hope this friendship lasts and doesn't get ruined by her greedy father. Canarine thanked her, saying if she didn't mind, she would also like to give her a nickname. A nickname for me? Cernia asked, and Canarine replied with a cheerful smile, saying she had actually been thinking of one for a while now. What about Nia? she asked. She said it was the name of a fairy her mom used to read her about. It was a story of a mischievous fairy, but one that loves and protects people. Kenarin told her that whenever she saw Cernia, she always thought about that fairy from the story. A fairy? Cernia asked, surprised, mumbling to herself that Kenarin looked more like a fairy than her because she was so small and cute. Kenarin wondered what she was thinking and suddenly brought out the book, saying if she was curious, she could lend it to her to read. Cernia collected it, saying she would read it carefully and return it in good shape, since it held special memories of her and her mom. Just then, the servant came in and informed her lady that the carriage from the Duke's mansion had arrived. Cernia knew she had to take her leave. She stood up, called her by her nickname, and told her they would see each other at the founding festival. Kenarin chuckled, saying she should have a safe trip and not forget to write her. Leaving the mansion, Cernia thought to herself that someday Kenarin too would have someone who would call her by a warm nickname, but until then, she would remain her friend. She smiled, thinking that she would have to come up with nicknames for the twins, too. After visiting the J-Fine household, peaceful days followed, and her daily life flowed quietly until one night. While sleeping, she heard someone call her name from the window. She opened her eyes, wondering who had such a deep and pleasant voice. She closed her eyes again, thinking it was a dream, but it was too vivid. Her eyes widened when she realized it was a man's voice. She rose from the bed thinking that besides Ariel and the Duke, the only men in the mansion were servants, and at this hour, no one should be upstairs. She reached for her dagger on the table and turned immediately, thinking maybe someone had broken the Duke's barrier. An assassin? She heard the voice call her name again, and it came from the window. She opened the curtains with the dagger in her hand and saw Sirius. He smiled and said it had been a while. Our boy is cute. I knew it would be him because last time he was really looking forward to the next time, she said. Cernia was surprised. She wondered why Sirius was here and quickly threw away the dagger. Why is Sirius here? She asked, and he looked sad, scratching the back of his head, saying he was anxious because next time never came. Cernia was confused, and before she knew it, he covered her with his jacket, saying it was cold. She smiled, thanking him, then suddenly freaked out and asked how he managed to get into the Duke's estate. Just then, Night showed up, barking, and she was confused. She leaned closer and asked, why was he here when he was supposed to be in the yard? She patted him, and Sirius laughed, saying, did you really name him Bomb? Meaning Night? She glanced at him, wondering, why was he laughing, or was he trying to pretend and make her lower her guard? He told her there was no need to be wary and explained that he and the little one were connected by magic. That's how he was able to bypass the Duke's barrier. Cernia instantly understood why the Duke forbade it from entering their rooms. She asked if he shared senses with Bomb since they were connected, like if she patted him, would he feel it too? Sirius said he hadn't tried it, but it could be possible. He asked if she wanted to test it, but she shouted immediately because knowing the two of them were connected was already overwhelming. He shut her up cutely, whispering that he was just joking, and if she didn't like it, he wouldn't do it. She sighed, thinking she always took his jokes too seriously. The wind got colder, and she told him to come in for now. Sirius was surprised and asked if she was sure he should enter. This is really so cute. They're meant for each other, believe me. Cernia glanced at him, smiled, and said that talking while standing when the conversation wasn't ending soon was awkward. Let's sit, shall we? She said cutely. They both sat across from each other, and Cernia asked if the whisper she heard earlier was from him. He replied that it was a transmission spell that no one besides her could hear. She asked what he meant by next time, and he reminded her of her promise to meet again the last time they saw each other. She recalled it and was shocked. She told him it had been half a year, and she didn't expect him to actually be waiting for her. His expression darkened, and he asked if she lied to him then. She freaked out, saying that wasn't it. It was just a greeting, and besides, they met today anyway. He glared at her, saying if he hadn't come to see her, he guessed they wouldn't have met until forever. She laughed, saying they would have met eventually, maybe at the founding festival or the academy entrance ceremony. Sirius went silent, and she felt the silence was too heavy and awkward. He told her he didn't want to meet her only at public events, but it seemed it wasn't the same for her. Cernia was shocked when she suddenly felt an aura from him, and even his eye color changed to red. She panicked, saying that wasn't it, and asked if he was startled. He looked confused and asked if he was. She decided to explain everything to him since it seemed he was getting the wrong idea. Prince Sirius, if you want to meet someone, you should make an appointment beforehand. The simplest way is to send a letter, she explained, and he kept staring at her confused. She couldn't help thinking to herself that Sirius seemed not properly cared for, because he literally didn't know basic etiquette. She could tell he was feeling something right now, and that feeling was curiosity. In the original storyline, feelings like love were only experienced by him when he met Daisy. She knew this conversation wouldn't end soon because of how clueless he was about some things. Cernia explained further, saying he had to write a letter stating the place and time, and even better if he included a reason. She added that the duchy had a designated place to receive letters, so he could give it to the servants. After saying that, she recalled that his palace didn't even have servants. She chuckled, saying if you wanted to send her letters, then he should probably just ask Prince Helios to deliver them. I don't want him to know, Sirius said sadly. She suggested using magic. Wouldn't that work? She asked. His face lit up immediately, saying that would be an easier way. She was glad that would work, but before she knew it, Sirius stood up and came closer to her, saying, "Why are you being so defenseless?" Exactly my point. She threw away her dagger immediately when she saw him, which is a bit careless. What if he didn't come with pure intentions? Well, maybe she trusts him because she read the novel. A man visits you in the middle of the night, and instead of sending him away, you invite him into your room? Do you understand what that could mean? He asked. He leaned closer, touched her hair, and said her purple hair and silver gray eyes, every part of her tempted him. He told her she was far too defenseless and that it was dangerous. He touched her face, approaching her and saying, "You invited him into your room wearing only nightwear, which made it harder to resist." Cernia pushed him away immediately, saying, "No way." He apologized at once, saying he was swayed by her scent and lost control. She told him no matter what, he needed to keep some things in mind as a prince. He apologized again, looking sad, and she explained that such actions required the other person's consent, and besides, he hadn't even had his coming-of-age ceremony yet. He sighed regretfully, saying she was right, and she wondered if he was being sincere or just acting. He looked at her and promised not to touch her again without permission until he became an adult, and only with her consent. She told him he must keep that promise, especially if the other person is still a minor. Seeing how obedient he was, she thought to herself that later she would teach him the difference between asking and commanding. Sirius told her he was going to take his leave now, and she asked if he was really going to leave. Before she knew it, he knelt before her and asked if he could kiss the back of her hand. She agreed, and he held her hand, placing a gentle kiss on it. The kiss lasted a little too long, and her face turned red, reminding her of how he almost kissed her earlier. He looked up at her, smiling, and said he would send her a letter next time before coming. She smiled, saying she would be waiting. He was about to magically teleport back, and she told him they would see each other again at the founding festival. Cernia was shocked when his hair color and eyes changed right before he disappeared. She stood there confused, thinking that she was certain the colors had just changed. It was morning when Ariel knocked on the door, announcing she was there. Cernia woke up still feeling sleepy, but her eyes widened immediately when she noticed Sirius's jacket on the bed. She hid it quickly under the blanket because if Ariel found out they met last night, it would be a disaster. Ariel was all dressed up and kept staring at her in confusion. Cernia acted strangely and asked what brought her here. Ariel told her she would follow her as expected, and Cernia couldn't help thinking that she was suddenly speaking like her uncle, using the same style of words, like father, like daughter. Cernia reminded her that she would be going in 2 days with Ariel, while she herself would be going with her father for the pre-welcome event. Ariel looked sad, and Cernia asked why she wanted to miss Kaylin's tea party. Ariel gritted her teeth, saying she didn't trust Ariel enough to leave her behind with him. Cernia told her not to give up on going to the welcome party she wanted to attend just because of her. Ariel became sad, and before she could say anything, the servant announced that the Duke was waiting. Cernia turned her around and told her to go enjoy your party. Ariel turned back sadly and told her to enjoy the event too. Cernia waved, smiling, and told her to make sure to tell her everything about the party later because she would look forward to hearing about it. The maids swarmed in, saying they would help her lady get ready. As Cernia was getting dressed, she couldn't help thinking about how Ariel wanted to follow her instead of going to the party she really wanted to attend. She felt the kids were becoming too dependent on her. She sighed, thinking that they would eventually be separated from her once they went to the academy, so she just needed to protect them for a little longer. At the event, with Ariel as her escort, she didn't expect to meet Bella there, but there she was. "Lady Cernia, I've been waiting for you," Bella said excitedly. Cernia chuckled and thanked her for inviting them to today's party. Bella told her it was an honor to have both of them there. Cernia was so excited to see the desserts, her face lighting up at how good they looked. Just then, Grendwin sighed from behind and called out to her, thanking her again for helping Bella last time. Cernia told him it was fine and that it was simply the right thing to do, and she was glad Bella was safe. Grendwin said he wouldn't forget her kindness and had really planned to give her a gift, but he couldn't think of anything that the Duke's family couldn't already obtain. So since he couldn't repay her with anything material, if she ever needed help in the future, she shouldn't hesitate to ask him. Cernia chuckled, thinking to herself that she didn't want him to repay the debt like Sirius did, so she clearly told him she didn't do it to get anything in return. He said he didn't mind and told her again not to hesitate. She agreed and then glanced at Bella, complimenting her that she looked like an angel today. Grendwin immediately said that Bella had always looked like an angel. He leaned closer and whispered to Cernia that his sister was fair, with translucent skin, flowing blonde hair, and eyes bluer than the sky. His face lit up as he praised his sister, adding that her heart was as pure as one of the angels who descended to earth. Cernia instantly remembered that this guy had a sister complex. This side of him is something no one ever saw after he met Daisy. At this point, I must say that Daisy, the female lead, really ruined all the boys in the story, because how could they all lose their minds and worship only her? Cernia couldn't help smiling to herself. So this was the kind of brother he had always been. She interrupted him immediately, saying Bella's eyes were like aquamarines, carefully crafted by a master craftsman. Grendwin was shocked when he heard her describe Bella exactly the way he wanted to. He smiled immediately, saying she had the same thoughts as him. Bella snuck up behind her brother and tugged at his clothes, telling him to come drink tea before it got cold and to stop bothering Lady Cernia. She hit him playfully, saying it was rude to talk like that without stopping. Cernia told Bella she didn't need to feel embarrassed because whenever she saw her, she actually had the same thoughts as her brother. Grendwin chuckled and said Lady Cernia had a keen eye for these things. Cernia then turned to Ariel, who was almost choking on his food, and asked if he was really eating alone like that, which was very petty. She told him to come and greet Lord Grendwin too. Ariel stood up, greeted him with a simple long time no see, and Grendwin replied with the same. The place fell silent, and she couldn't believe that was it. The way men greet each other is totally different from women, so that's really it. Bella broke the silence by saying that every time she went to see her brother at the palace, she always passed the Duke's household and thought of Cernia. Bella then asked if she could call her sister. At this point, I must say that Cernia has become everyone's favorite. I wonder if it will be the same with the female lead. I actually doubt that. Cernia touched her face softly and said, of course she could. Suddenly, Grendwin asked if he could call her sister as well, which shocked everyone. If Ariel was here, I doubt this conversation would end well. Cernia thought to herself that it was a bit creepy for a big guy like him to call her sister. Ariel immediately blocked her from them, shouting that the only one who could call her sister was him. Grendwin quickly took his words back, saying they should just talk casually since they were the same age. He smiled and called her sister again, saying he looked forward to seeing her at the founding festival. Ariel glared at him and warned him not to call her sister again. Cernia chuckled, saying the two of them actually got along well. She could feel that they might become friends. Bella's first friend was Cernia, while Grenwyn's first friend was Ariel. She thought to herself that without Daisy appearing, a lot of things were already beginning to change from the original story. That day, back at the Duke's mansion, Ariel was so angry when she heard that their sister had made a new sister. Cernia spent the whole evening suffering from the twins' jealousy. She couldn't help thinking to herself that if this continued, she might end up growing fond of the Kaelin siblings. This is where this part of the story ends. If you love this story and you want us to continue, please comment the protagonist's name, Cernia.